Good morning, Nova Nation. It's WXVU Sports Director David Szczepanski back in the WXVU studio. Time for a Villanova men's basketball recap as Villanova battled the Xavier Musketeers last night in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Cintas Center. Unfortunately for the Cats, they have lost their second consecutive game. They lost last night by Xavier. Final score, the Musketeers 69, Villanova 63. So two straight losses for Villanova. And the Wildcats had a lead in this game. They led by 8 points at halftime. They led by 5 points with about 2 minutes left to go in this game. They just couldn't hold on. The defense allowed 45 points in the second half to Xavier. Villanova's defense couldn't get stops down the stretch, very similar to what we saw against St. John's in New York on Saturday. And Villanova has been outscored by about 20 points in the second half of their last 3 games. So the second half struggles continue for Villanova. In terms of some stats here, right, the score 69-63 in favor of Xavier. Both teams shot around 40% from the field and 40% from behind the arc. Both of these teams really started off poorly from behind the arc in the first half. Both teams were around 30% less than that even for kind of the first half of that first half, so the first 10 minutes of this game. But both teams really picked it up, especially in the second half for the Xavier Musketeers. Eric Dixon scored 18 points. He was pretty inefficient again for Villanova, but Dixon continues to be reliable, already still getting 18, 20 points per game, still leading the country with almost 25 points per contest. And Jordan Longino continues to also play really well. I mean, he scored 18 points, had one of the best games of his career, had a career-high 19 points against DePaul earlier this month, and backed it up with an 18-point performance against Xavier last night in Cincinnati. So he's doing everything that he can for Villanova over the past month and a half. He has really picked up his game, like I said, over the past few weeks for Villanova. Wooga Poplar had a pretty good game as well, hit some big shots for the Wildcats down the stretch. But Villanova, they just couldn't get enough offense in the second half. They had some long scoring droughts in the final 20 minutes, and their defense really struggled in this game in the second half. They did hold Xavier to under 70 points, but like I said, they allowed 45 points in just the final 20 minutes of this game. So that goes to show you how they really struggled in the second half. In terms of Xavier, I mean, their leading scorer in this game was Ryan Conwell, had 34 points. That was a career high for him, the Indiana State transfer. And, really, if you were to say in the beginning of the game that the combination of Zach Fremantle and Davion McKnight were only going to combine for 20 points, you would say that Villanova has a great chance of walking out of Cincinnati with a victory. Unfortunately, Villanova just couldn't get it done. But Fremantle really struggled in this game. He started off hot, scored 7 points early on in this contest in the first half, in the first 10 minutes, I should say, of the first half, but then really struggled towards the end of it, was really inefficient from behind the arc as well from the field. Davion McKnight had some buckets in that second half, but overall McKnight has continued to kind of struggle over the past few games. As I said, he's kind of taken a step backwards from where he was last season for the Musketeers. Averaged around 13 points per game last season for Xavier. He's around 10 points this season for the Xavier Musketeers. But Xavier, I mean, you have to give them credit. Villanova won the rebounding battle, but Xavier's defense was able to force some turnovers in that second half and, really make a good game plan adjustment. And really down the stretch, you look at the adjustment that Xavier made at halftime. I mean, it was a great adjustment by Coach Miller for Xavier, and they really played well down the stretch. Offensively, defensively, of course, led by Ryan Conwell, who had 34 points for the Musketeers. Villanova did have 14 turnovers in this game. For a team that only had 29 turnovers in their previous 5 contests, they really struggled in this game against Xavier. Like I said, 14 turnovers down the stretch wasn't good. And when you win the rebounding battle by a pretty convincing margin at the end of the game, you expect to, kind of keep it closer, right? This was a 6-point win for Xavier, and Villanova had a 5-point advantage with 2 minutes left in this game, or around 2 minutes left. So Villanova really struggled to kind of close this game out. A theme of what has been over the past couple years, just kind of Villanova unable to close out games down the stretch. Villanova, also when you look at bench points, they scored just 2 bench points in this game. Tyler Perkins, the Penn transfer, continues to struggle. In his last 6 games, he's only scored more than 2 points once. So hopefully Perkins can get it going again. And Villanova will have an opportunity to rebound on Friday night against Providence at the Wells Fargo Center, 7 p.m. tip-off. And it should be a great environment. We're going to honor the 40th anniversary of the 1985 championship team in South Philadelphia. So the environment should be great, and hopefully Villanova can feed off of it. And, you don't want to say that any game is must-win at the end of January, but with the way Villanova's non-conference schedule started with, losses to St. Joe's, losses to Virginia, losses to Columbia, Villanova, they cannot afford many more conference losses, especially against a Providence team, a team that they should beat, a team that Villanova is better than, at least on paper. Providence got crushed by Creighton last night, so hopefully Villanova can rebound off of 2 straight losses. I mean, again, 2 pretty good teams, right? St. John's is a very good team. They're not ranked, but they're receiving votes in the top 25. Ken Palm is very high on the St. John's Red Storm team. They were able to pull out a win against Georgetown last night at Madison Square Garden. And the Xavier team, I mean, they're on the edge of quad 1, quad 2. Even though they've had a tough start to conference play, they are still a well-coached team. They have really good players like Fremantle, like Conwell, like McKnight. But Villanova, I mean, that game against Xavier, a game where you had a lead at halftime by 8, you had a lead at double digits in the game, you had a lead down the stretch. That could be a game that they want back, but hopefully they can get back in the win column on Friday night. Thanks for tuning in to this Villanova men's basketball recap. Again, Villanova versus Xavier. Unfortunately, the Wildcats could not pull out the victory. They fall to 11-7 and 4-3 in conference play. Let's see if Villanova can rebound against the Friars on Friday. Our WXVU pregame coverage will begin at 6:30 p.m. Ryan Scanlon, Stephen Kane, and I will have the call from the Wells Fargo Center. Have a great rest of your day, Nova Nation. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, go Cats!